You're listening to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeca.com for coupons and locations today. Now, here's your host, James Ham.
Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. I am James Ham, and today I am joined by another guest, a very intriguing guest, one of the owners of the Sacramento Kings, Mr. Andy Miller. Andy, how are you?
Great. How you doing?
I'm good. You've got to be excited about this Sacramento Kings team. They're off to a really quick start. We pre-record this on Thursday, so we have yet to see the outcome of the Memphis game, but you come in 5-3. You've got a 5-game winning streak already this season, which hasn't happened in, almost a decade or more. And what are your early takeaways from this quick start by your Kings?
Well, we're definitely excited, and I would say a little surprised, but not completely shocked. You know, the preseason is tough. We have a whole new roster. If you look at the roster from the beginning of last year to the beginning of this year, I think we have two players, 2 or 3 folks who are still on the roster.
Jason Thompson and DeMarcus Cousins. That's it.
That's it, right? And a couple of rookies who were there in the beginning. So it's definitely a period where they've got to learn to play together, learn to trust each other. We've seen fits and starts where they're amazing, like the first quarter in the Dallas game of the night, and then they fall apart a couple quarters later, and we've seen just 4 great quarters of basketball. So last year was a lot, I think, for Coach Malone to get these guys to understand the type of basketball he wanted to play. I think he's got a better team, better personnel this year, and they're buying into a system, so it's encouraging. I love seeing them get to the line and change the game, with their aggressive play. We're pretty happy.
You brought up something there, the change in personnel, and the ownership group as a whole took a beating for the decision not to bring Isaiah Thomas back. He was clearly a fan favorite, and we're not going to go into the decision. I just want to know, is Darren Collison bringing everything and more that you guys thought he would? Because as of right now, he sure does look like a find for you guys. He
really does. So, Vivek said it a million times. We all loved Isaiah. He did so much, forget about on the court, but off the court for the franchise. He was there for us as a new ownership group as well. So everyone's a fan. As far as the team and the system and what the coach wanted to run, Darren Collison's a great fit, and he's a veteran presence, and he's got an amazing underrated shot. Like when he first came in, I was watching him shoot in the gym, and I was pretty far away. I didn't know who it was. He was hitting 3 after 3 after 3 after 3, just going around the circle all the way back. I couldn't believe it. And he's a super personable guy, nice. You see him put his arm around Ben and Nick, and during plays, you see him just get right up to DeMarcus and talk to him. So I think he's the calming, controlling presence that we needed. And if you look in the Dallas game, when the wheels started to come off, he wasn't there because he was hurt, and that was probably the reason why the wheels came off in a big way. That we couldn't, you couldn't stop the bleeding in that game. So he's a very important part to our team. He's helping create a great culture, and the guy just wants to win. He wants to win. He doesn't care. He wants to be part of a winner, and he's helping create a very unselfish attitude.
You brought up the way that he approaches other players, and I've even talked to DeMarcus Cousins about this. Cousins talked about it's always positive. It's positive affirmation all the time. He said Collison is always in his ear. He's always got his arm around him. He's always giving him positive feedback. It's never negative. And I think that is an underrated asset that Collison brings to the table. Now, you guys you had no time to make this decision when you first bought this team last year. You had to throw a lot of money at DeMarcus Cousins. You guys locked him up to a long-term deal. It was the first move that this franchise made. Maybe you weren't even on board when that decision is made, but he is paying dividends. Right now, he is possibly the best big man in the game. He's possibly a top 5 player. I know he's early in the projections. He's even in the top 5 in MVP voting already when it comes to, sort of projecting. How impressed are you with year 2 of DeMarcus Cousins and the maturity that we're seeing from this kid?
I was impressed from year 1. So the maturity is the big question, and it's been a pleasant surprise all year round. The experience with Coach K and the FIBA basketball was everything, I think, for him to see, hey, this is what it's like to play with a team of all-stars. And I'm going to go back to my team, and I have to be the leader, not just the best player, but a real leader. And people have to want to play with me, because they had to want to play with DeMarcus to make that team, because they had other choices, outside of DeMarcus. And he made that team, and he shined there. And he shined. The reports we got back from all the coaches, not just Coach K, were glowing. And we kept in great touch with him all year round. And he's a great kid. He's a great kid off the court. And on the court and in practice, he needs to be the leader, especially in practice. So it's great that the story's kind of been written for him in that journalistic weird way where it's, okay, DeMarcus was a monster last year and he's a hothead. And now all of a sudden, since he played on the world stage with Coach K, he's going to be an all-star this year. It's a foregone conclusion before the season started. So as long as it's been written and he can fulfill that storyline, I think he's going to be in great shape for a lot of years going forward. But he's making us look very smart, signing him to the contract, long-term contract. Vivek and Mastroff will tell you that when we got the team, there were plenty of folks in and around the organization and basketball who said, this is a bad move. This is going to be a waste of your money. It's going to be an albatross around your neck, having a long-term contract with a guy with this type of personality and a very mercurial nature. And we went for it, and he's going to be the corner of this franchise for a long time.
You bring up something there about the way that, Mastroff and you, and I mean, again, there are so many owners. There are, I don't even know if there were like really a number to put on it. What is it, like 65? If you count the minnows,
No.
the minority owners. I mean, there are a lot of guys floating around out there, but the small group of you guys that are actually owners of the majority of this team, how is that going for you? I mean, this is like one of those really strange social experiments where you take a bunch of brilliant people, you stick them in a room, and you say, okay, let's run a basketball team. How is the development of the internals of this thing working out for you as a member of really one of the more brilliant, probably the most brilliant ownership group in professional sports?
Well, it's an interesting question, an interesting social experiment. It'd be a fun reality show. You've got a bunch of guys who've done a bunch of things, and there's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's a lot of ego, but there's definitely ego. And people are used to being the man, and it doesn't work here. And, there's guys like Pete and Mully and others who know basketball a lot better than any of us. So you've got to kind of put it all aside and figure out how do we work together. And as you said, we all got thrown together. I knew Mark for a while, and Mark knew Vivek for a while, but I think that's about it as far as everybody else. And we need to figure out who does what and how we work together and how we make decisions and how Vivek was going to lead. And it's been a challenge, but I think we're finally hitting our stride. Last year we had no time to do anything except for get a team on the field, and as Vivek says, get the roof patched up and get the place playable for basketball. But this year has been, we got to take our time. Pete really got to settle in, and Coach Malone, and we got to work on what's our thesis, what's our system here, what are people going to do, how are we going to work as a team from a business side. Chris Granger has been a godsend because he's so experienced and guiding us through the NBA. So it's a really good group of guys. We have the Jacobs folks who help out, but obviously they're down in San Diego. And then there's a group up here as well who are some folks more involved than others. But I think everyone's kind of finding what a great level of involvement and investment is for them. And it's a blast so far. It's definitely more fun when you're winning.
Yeah.
So this season's been more fun so far. But we're in this for the long run, that's for sure.
It's a lot more fun to cover a team that's winning as well, just so you know.
I would imagine. Yeah. We're doing our best.
Now, your specialty is tech. You are a tech-savvy guy, and you're a big piece behind the Kings app. Why don't you tell us about what the new Kings app is bringing this year? You're all new again, and this thing is just, it's next level, right?
We're getting there. So we redesigned the whole thing. Last year, we wanted to get one out, and we did, and I think it was probably a little rushed, and it had a lot of functionality in there, and it just wasn't the best user experience. So we took a lot of feedback. We redesigned it, and we started with something very simple. So download the iOS app, which is available now in the App Store. The Android app should be available by the end of this month, hopefully. You'll see a very clean, very white, very simple background with a lot of content in there. So it has a great news feed where you don't have to hook up with 9 or 10 different Kings outlets, and you can see whatever you want there on the news feed in real time with Instagram pictures, fan pictures, behind the scenes content from the Kings production crew as well. And then there's lots of statistics, which we've got a lot of fan feedback on, positive and negative, and what to add there. We'll be adding within the next few weeks a radio broadcast, so you'll be able to hear that, as well as Facebook integration, so you'll be able to find your friends and make plans through the app. And then we'll be using the app as a way, since it will be the center of the wheel in the new stadium, to start testing out technology for the new stadium. So depending where you sit and different installations in the existing stadium here at Sleep Train, we'll be doing more with food ordering from the seat and line queuing and a bunch of things with parking. We've already done some Uber integration. So we'll start to test a whole bunch of things so that, less than 2 years now, which is scary to even say because there's a lot to be done. You'll be using your Kings app to really navigate your way through the new stadium, get special replays, a whole bunch of things that we have lined up with the Wi-Fi system, which will be not just world-class, but the first real installation of technology that Qualcomm's helped us design, which isn't even in market yet. So it should be something very special.
Now, you brought it up there, the new stadium. I mean, you have to just be looking at, we were there for the groundbreaking, last week, and just this giant hole in the ground, and you're going to see steel girders go up. I think the projection there is like February or March. We'll start seeing steel rise from the ground. The thing is, the shell of it will go up really quickly. I don't know if you know how quickly construction goes, but then the internals of this building is going to be so far advanced. How excited are you to put your stamp on this as again, a tech guy, a guy who's made his living, with sort of incredible advancements? How excited are you to jump into this big, giant, huge project and sort of see how you're able to change the fan experience going forward for professional sports?
Well, first of all, that was a big hole. I mean, when you get down there, I'm like, man, you're looking at a tiny model or like some drawing, and then when you actually step down in that pit, it's like, this is huge. It is that pit was like 1.5 million square feet. So this stadium is giant compared to anything else that's out there. It's more than double, I believe, what we have now. I know that the cornerstone went down for the state-of-the-art practice facility, which is really important. We're already talking about retail and the hotels that go there. So the whole area is just going to be bumping. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. But I'm a total stadium guy. I'll just go to games in random cities just to see the stadiums. Having grown up at Fenway Park and loving the nooks and crannies of all oddities of every stadium, this is going to be fun. So we've done stuff like putting the Wi-Fi in, which seems boring to talk about, but the reality is if you don't have kick-ass Wi-Fi, you can't do all these interesting things you want to do with your smartphone or with beacons or line queuing or ordering or replays or video or whatever it is. So we're setting the basis for something that hopefully will last for a decade because it's a huge investment. And then once we're in there, we've talked about a lot of the little amenities and things how we're going to enhance the fan experience. But what we want to do is actually show the fans how it all works. So we're going to be creating a state-of-the-art NOC, which is a network operations center. Think like NASA. So you can literally look at it and look in and see all the dials and switches, and everything will be labeled and how we're working everything from the air quality, which is a whole different way of having air in a stadium. We're not going to pump forced air through. We're going to literally bring fresh air. It's going to be very different to all the environmental sort of controls that we have to prove that this is one of the most green buildings in the world, to our video reviews, to you name it. And it's going to be really interesting. I think it'll be interesting for anyone who goes in, for kids to learn about all these things. But it just will be a big symbol of kind of all the thought that's going into this. So I can't wait. I'm pumped to just get there, but the journey is, usually most of the fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's incredible that you guys have built such a team that can do something like this, and you've done it so quickly. I mean, I've always, it sounds really silly, but you guys have like mints and waters that are like already branded with the new arena. It's you're just so far ahead of the curve. It's almost like you guys were planning this for 10 years, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, an opportunity, and you jumped in. And that's not the way it happened. Now, hey, I want to bring something up to you. I know you've been at the games as much as possible, but the new floor is incredible. The new digital boards on the scoreboard are covering up literally the ugliest, most outdated board in the NBA. And then this pregame show, I don't know who's responsible for that, but oh my gosh, it's absolutely incredible. Who and how and what is going on where you literally make that floor dance and come apart and do crazy things, and if there's a point where you literally forget that you're watching a court, you actually think you're watching a TV screen, and then boom, you see someone walk by, and it's like, oh my gosh, it takes you out of it.
Isn't it awesome?
It's incredible. Yeah. Who did that?
So we've had a lot of talk about the floor, and there's Ryan Montoya, who you should have Ryan on if you haven't, because he's the real makes it all happen tech guy for the King. Ryan, I always kid that he was a Navy SEAL, but I think he might have been. Like, he's the most stealthy dude in the world. His background was very much in politics and helping run campaigns and technology and in government stuff. But he's amazing. And you come up with any idea, like we started talking about the floor, and then a few days later he's like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I can do this. So we want to do something very special for the new stadium. And we've been trying out for the floor of the new stadium, so 2 years out, right? And we've been thinking about what can we do that's different. And we've seen some things, I don't want to ruin it because we're trying to get approval for things, but we've seen things in China that we love, something in Japan that I've been obsessed about, and it made us think, all right, this is 2 years out. We're going to try and do our best to do something crazy and special and unique for Sacramento when the stadium launches, when the stadium opens. But right now, since we have a reputation now of doing firsts, like Bitcoin and what we've done with Oculus Rift and what we've done with Google Glass. So people are coming to us, and we had conversations about the floor, and then boom, we have people who are showing us 3D projections and all these other things that they haven't done on a scale. So we were able to work with small vendors and startups, and Ryan can put it all together in sort of the antiquated infrastructure that is the Train Arena and do something neat. And this was one of the examples of it, since we were investigating. You give Ryan a topic and he goes real deep, and the topic was the floor and how do we make this thing come alive. And we found this group that has done this on a smaller scale with 3D projections, and we use actually those graphics that you see on the floor. A lot of that was designed by the Kings ourselves, because we have a great graphics and animation group, and put it all together for sort of a 2-night special. We'll probably bring it back, but the fan reaction was terrific. They loved it. So, and I got to say that I was sitting on the floor that night, and it is not as great as if you were. The further away you were sitting from the floor, the better. So it was something to see, that's for sure.
So what you're saying is that the media seats that used to be right where you're sitting, that I used to sit in, wouldn't have had nearly as good a seat seeing it. So I'm better that I was off the court now.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. The further away, the better.
That's right. All right, well, Andy, I know you're a busy man. You've got a million things to do, so I think that's going to do it. This has been an enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for coming in.
Awesome. It was a great time. Hopefully, when this airs, we'll be starting our next 5-game win streak, and hope everyone can come out on Saturday for the Spurs, because it'll be great to pack the house there. And this is always a tough place to play, and now we have a team that people will fear. So it's going to be a fun season.
Most definitely. All right. Andy Miller, co-owner of the Sacramento Kings. Thanks for dropping in.
Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
Welcome back to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeka.com for coupons and locations today. I am James Ham. Joining me, Mr. Aaron Bruski. And I don't know what we just saw, but it was not good, and the Sacramento Kings have now lost 3 in a row, but 2 by beyond heartbreaking fashion. Aaron Bruski, what do you make of the 111-110 loss to the Memphis Grizzlies after the Sacramento Kings led by as many as 26?
The Maloofs were operating the clock. I don't know.
They've been maloofed.
They've been. I mean, it's Maloofed. I don't know, man. That's just crazy. To see a team fall like that twice in a row, there's definitely something real about it. It's not a fluke. But the way they're doing it is just so polarizing from one quarter to the next. In the first quarter of both those games, they look like world beaters. The other teams look like they haven't even read a scouting report on the Kings. They come out lackadaisical. And credit the Kings, they're out there just throwing haymakers and landing them. Then these just choke jobs they're just brutal.
Yeah,
So
that's the term Rui used as well. The choke. The choke. I mean, the Kings led 38-16 after the first quarter. 38-16. They shot 68.2% from the field, which is clearly not sustainable. We all know that, but they held their opponent to 27% shooting. They out-rebounded them 15-5 in that first quarter. If basketball games were 12 minutes long, the Sacramento Kings are like the best team in the world right now. But we know that they're not. And I think let's try to figure out here in this conversation, where does it go wrong? Where does it go wrong? In your opinion, Aaron, where does it go wrong for the Sacramento Kings that they literally just fall apart and allow something like this to happen? I mean, DeMarcus Cousins spit it out about as clear as you can say it, right? This is the difference. Tonight showed the difference between a good team and a bad team. But I don't think they're a bad team. I'm sorry. Go.
Yeah, no. I think that what we've seen is DeMarcus Cousins is, and I'll say it, I don't know if I said it last week, but he's an MVP caliber, in the MVP discussion type player. And his offense is amazing. He's a guy that commands a triple team. His defensive presence has been the rising tide that's lifted all the boats. That's why Sacramento Kings fans are seeing this amazing resurgence and not understanding where is it coming from, because it's a lot of the same guys from last year. He has changed the game on both ends of the court, and it's opened things up for other guys. So set that aside for a second. The problem with the Kings, and I wrote about this for NBC, it's ironic they need another playmaker scorer, because if Cousins gets in foul trouble, if he goes to the bench, if these guys sit and rest, if Darren Collison, who's now kind of filled in that Isaiah Thomas role as not just like the pass first and I'm not going to be involved guy, he's the third wheel in this offense.
Yes, he is.
When one of those three is not playing at an optimum level, and we could talk about Ben McLemore in a second because I don't even know who that guy is anymore. But when one of those three guys is not playing at an optimum level, or they're out because the second unit is in, this offense gets bogged down, and then it turns around and it translates to the defensive end, and that's the stuff that Mike Malone's pissed off about.
Yeah, we talked about this in the Road Reaction postgame show too, and again, I don't like beating a dead horse, but the Sacramento Kings, when they go to their bench, the wheels fall off the bus like 100%. I mean, tonight, like the plus minus, their entire starting lineup has like a huge plus. Their entire bench unit has a huge negative. I mean, Carl Landry ran a negative 23. Omri Caspi plays 744, a negative 11. In less than 8 minutes, he had a negative 11. And those are things that you just can't live with. I mean, this team is getting zero production. Again, Ramon Sessions, he had a very nice game in Dallas as a starter, but again, 18 points, 6 and 9 shooting, something like that, and he has 0 assists in 36 minutes. He's just a score-first point guard, and I think, not to like point this out again because we may have said this before, but Ramon Sessions is realistically just $5 million cheaper than Isaiah Thomas. Because if this team had Darren Collison and Isaiah Thomas, I think they're pretty much unstoppable.
That's the elephant in the room right now that nobody's talking about. Is you shut down the discussion between who like Collison versus Thomas for 1 second. Everybody just give that thing up for a second. You put the two together, and even if you put Collison in the starting lineup and you put Thomas in the second unit, as people that are kind of anti-Thomas and pro Collison would probably prefer it. That's insane. because right now Cousins is commanding so much attention that Ben McLemore could just sit out there and take his time and just shoot threes all day, and he's hitting them now. And that's when you see the Kings wallop the Memphis Grizzlies at home, where they've won something like 17 straight games and are owners of one of the best defenses in the league. When he is walloping them with those 3-point shots, you get a 38-point quarter, and that's scary. So if Isaiah Thomas is on this squad, it's really, really interesting to think where these guys would be.
Yeah, I think, see, Ben McLemore came into this game. In his last 4 games, he was 11 of 23 on three-pointers. He's figured something out, and I don't know how the game decidedly slowed down for him 5 games ago now. But after tonight, he's hit 14 of his last 29 three-point attempts. He's shooting close to 50% from behind the arc. He's playing so well, and you're right. The reason why he's playing so well is because nobody's guarding him. They're not guarding him at all. And until he can show that he can do this for 10 or 15 games straight, where he's putting up 14 or 15 on people, then nobody is going to guard him. So I think that is, like, the development of him is huge for the Kings if he continues on this trend. But you're going to face a team that thinks that they can shut down Cousins by them, going man on man. So, I expect that we're going to see a little bit of that in San Antonio. I think we'll see a lot of it when Ashik is going up against him with the Pelicans on, Tuesday, and then again on Thursday when Joakim Noah is in town. So we're going to get to see teams that are going to spread it out, and that's what I want to see. I want to see what Ben McLemore can do when someone's actually guarding him, because as of right now, we're not seeing much of it. And he's looked good, but he needs to continue to grow and continue to figure it all out. And they need Stauskas firing away. He's a guy that can really shoot the ball, and they need more shooters because the Oklahoma City Thunder clearly wrote the book, right, of how to stop the Sacramento Kings on Sunday. And that's how every team should face the Sacramento Kings. They should run zones at them. They should just clog the lane and stop DeMarcus Cousins. And then it's like, what do you got now? So, but that's not what we're seeing.
And on that note, I'm seeing teams really struggle with Cousins. His shot-making ability has always been unique, but it's never been refined, in my opinion. It's always been a little bit off the rocker. This year, he has a distinct set of moves that top-tier defenders. Marc Gasol got fooled by his quick flips and his kind of like underneath the arm shots. It was like he'd never seen them before. And I know this stuff is on tape, and I know that these guys don't necessarily watch the tape of the Sacramento Kings until, all of a sudden the Kings are the talk of the town, and they're like, oh my God, we got to watch tape on these guys. So I think teams are going to figure out what are his favorite little shots, because right now they're fooling people just kind of almost on their face. They're just so weird. In addition, I think teams are going to figure out that you have to double Cousins in a way. You can't let him get that momentum to the hoop. The minute he has momentum toward the hoop, if you're on your way, it's too late. And I think teams are going to flash early, like you said, mix in a little zone, change up the looks, because right now Sacramento hasn't proven itself to be a team that's really kind of a thinking team that's going to be able to whip the ball around. I know there's been talk of increased ball movement, but it's not, we haven't seen them counteract a good chess players, say like a Greg Popovich, that can get in there and say, okay, we're going to make Ben McLemore beat us off the dribble, and Jason Thompson, we're going to make that guy handle the ball a lot. It's been pretty much whatever they want they can get for the Kings.
It is a chess match, right? The NBA is a long season. You start to get a larger sample size of these teams. I wrote about it on Thursday. The misuse of Jason Thompson is going to eventually come back to haunt this team. The fact that Sessions is off to a horrible start is eventually going to haunt this team, and we're starting to see little bits in the chinks in the armor here and there. But at the same time, how positive this is like huge. The Sacramento Kings could very well be 7-2 on the season if they didn't have colossal collapses. 7-2.
It's okay. So it's totally. I think Kings fans can be very happy about. Like for instance, I'm sold that this is a better team than I thought they were over the summer, and
They aren't who you thought they were.
exactly. And I think we didn't know what kind of a step forward DeMarcus Cousins was really going to be able to take, and that's where I think you're seeing this big jump, meaning like they can go into Memphis and be competitive, they can go into Dallas and be competitive. Those games I thought actually counted. I thought the Phoenix game was probably their best win of the season, actually. Um, prior to that, the teams were so wishy-washy. Denver, we've seen what's happened with them. Portland really didn't care about that game. Clippers are having problems. I don't know what's up with Blake Griffin. If the arrest has got him down, but there's no explosion there.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's being handcuffed. He's literally
Yeah.
and figuratively handcuffed on the basketball court.
So like I just I think they're a better team, but the issues that you outlined earlier with Sessions and the weak points on this team, they are literally one injury away from being easily defendable and not having the manpower to be the defensive team that Mike Malone wants them to be. So, and especially if offense is connected to defense as it has been in these collapses where when guys get frustrated, they're not getting calls or they're not getting buckets, they're not rotating, they're not getting to their spots, they're not fighting like the way that they do in that first quarter when they come out gangbusters. So the big three, Collison, Gay, and Cousins, if anything happens to one of them, I think it really is a critical blow. So hopefully, Pete D'Alessandro's got that wheeling and dealing hat on, and he can get out there and get a guy, you know, whatever, is in the past is in the past, but get a guy similar to who and bring him in because you do need a guy that can create off the dribble, get his own shot, and be efficient while doing that. So they had that. Now they just got to get out there and go find it again.
I think you might want to wait just a little while to see if Sessions is really this bad. I mean, I think you have to wait because Sessions does have a track record of being a solid NBA player. I think that the glaring weakness on this team, I mean, Ben McLemore stepping up and you're starting to see him produce. So it's no longer the horrible weakness, especially if you look at the way that he's been defending. I think it really comes back to Jason Thompson and the power forward position. I think that Carl Landry is a guy who can get you 18 minutes a game, but I don't think he can get you much more than that until he's fully back in game shape, which I don't believe he is. Reggie Evans is a guy that at this point in his career, does he really have a spot in a rotation? I'm not sure. Maybe
Yeah.
the Kings look at Ryan Hollins as another option there at the big position. But, Jason Thompson, to me, like what I wrote, I just think he's so underutilized. And that's not because I think Jason Thompson is a great NBA player. Don't get me wrong. But Jason Thompson is a guy who's averaged 10 points a game in his career. He's a guy that per 36 is more like 14 points a game. And he's a guy who can hit a jumper. He can score for you in the post. He can mix things up. Like, again, I thought tonight, watching Cousins take Gasol off the dribble, that's exactly what I would have brought Gasol out and even done more of that. Bring Gasol way out. But then Memphis started to sag and slow DeMarcus Cousins' ability to take the ball to the hole. I would have let him shoot a few more jumpers, fed the ball into the post, especially with Thompson and Gay, and try to get some easy baskets that way, and let Cousins be a distributor when he wasn't just destroying these guys. But they got to find a way to get all of the pieces going because this team is not good enough to play 4-on-5 on any given night, even if it's on one side of the court. And it's something that they're going to have to, deal with, whether it's inserting Carl Landry into the starting lineup or whether it's going out and finding someone else. They've got to start figuring it out because the power forward position where you got a guy who's averaging 2.8 points a game, that's just not working. And, again, Jason Thompson per 36 is shooting less field goal attempts a game than any other Sacramento King, including Ryan Hollins, including Reggie Evans. And that's just, to me, that doesn't make any sense. You need all of these guys to make this work, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, that's the way that basketball works. Is you got to get contributions from all your guys, even if you've got a defensive specialist in there. You got to feed him at some point. And you're right. Thompson has he has skill. It's always just been kind of like misunderstood, not only by Thompson but by everybody else he's playing with, because nobody's really ever known how to develop or use that.
Yeah.
And this is just, but you have a team here that's just tasting success for the first time, and they've got this incredible weapon. Too good. I mean, Rudy Gay is probably not going to get as much credit as he deserves if he keeps up playing like this. But I mean, DeMarcus Cousins, got the way he's burying jumpers out there. I mean, he probably is the Kings' most, I hate to say it, like reliable shooter from 18 feet. I don't know, like, but that's been the problem with the Kings too, is the fact that teams go under screens with Darren Collison still. Darren's done a good job of keeping teams honest, but if you're gonna go under the screen on the point guard, and up until now teams haven't been respecting Ben McLemore, people are probably preferring Rudy to shoot the outside jumper as well. And if you pack it in with Jason Thompson, then you got three guys already waiting in the lane for DeMarcus Cousins. It's a hard place to drive, and that's where I think you see when there's one-on-one play. This is the problem with the Kings last year. Why it was unfair to criticize Isaiah Thomas for dribbling the ball is when the defense is packed in, your screen and roll is not going to work. There's a lot of action that you would normally be able to create that you just can't create. You watch Isaiah in space in Phoenix, and he's got just massive lanes to drive to the hoop in, and that's why he's having the success that he's having over there. The same thing happened with Darren Collison tonight in the fourth quarter. I mean, he's dribbling down at the end of the shot clock. There's no action, and it's because these teams are packing it in.
All right, you are listening to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. I am James Ham. With me, Mr. Aaron Bruski. Sacramento Kings fall 111-110 against Memphis Grizzlies, which is really the topic of the night. The topic of the week is the way that the Sacramento Kings have basically blown 50 points worth of leads in 2 games. And have nothing to show for the last 3 games on a road trip, where one game was against an injury-riddled Oklahoma City team that had no business playing with the Kings, but still beat them, followed by 2 games that the Kings, typically don't have any business being in the game, especially when you look at Memphis winning 17 straight at home, Dallas beating Sacramento. I think it's, 21 consecutive times in Dallas, dating all the way back to February of 2003. And still, the Kings are right there in these games. They've got to figure out a way to win, to put a team away. I mean, that's what it seems like. Again, I read a tweet by David Thorpe, Coach Thorpe for ESPN, and he said the Kings need to play their bench more because their starters are showing tired legs in the fourth quarter. And honestly, you can't play the bench more. You can't. These guys deserve 10 minutes a game, 12 minutes a game. That's where they are at right now in this season. And I think that the Kings, Pete D'Alessandro probably wanted to put away the rootinest tootinest cowboy act that he's typically doing, but I think he's got to get it back out really quickly, right? He needs to start initiating deals to try to make this team better now, because you can see how some pieces are fitting and how some aren't.
It's really, we know that they want to improve fast, and every team wants to improve fast, but these guys want to do it. They're not building through typical redevelopment efforts. They're not the Sixers.
No.
They're who lost by something like 80 points tonight. And also, late breaking news: the Kings are going to appeal that game, according to Carmichael Dave.
They're going to appeal the game?
Yes.
Well, I think they should appeal the game.
Okay, that call. I saw the trajectory of the ball change, and I saw the clock start late, but I don't understand, even if you got your way as a Kings fan on every single aspect of that, how would they be able to measure that to say that there wasn't, that it wasn't in time? I would think that it wasn't in time, but since it's got to be definitive, is there like a clock in Secaucus or wherever?
Of course. No. They can replay the actual Okay, so listen, there's two different plays that are going on here, right? It's whether Ryan Hollins actually touched the ball, and if that happens, then the clock starts automatically and it expires by the time the ball gets halfway to the lane.
But can they prove that?
Okay, well, but I think what the Kings are going to complain is that even if Ryan Hollins doesn't touch it and you don't have definitive, because there did look like there was space on one specific angle, that there was space between Hollins' hands and the ball, but I'm not sure that the ball didn't hit his hand before that. The real question I think is going to be is did Courtney Lee get the ball off in .3 of a second? And you're not allowed to catch and shoot. And whether he was flying through the air or not, that was a catch and shoot. All you're allowed to do in .3 of a second is tip. And the refs, realistically, they should have waved it off instantly because he caught the ball at his waist. He was still in motion, sliding through the lane with the ball on his hand for well over .3 of a second, but they didn't start the clock until it left his hand. And you can go back and figure out the point that it touched his hand, and then fast forward tenths of a second.
If we could take a half step between Derek Fisher and somehow hitting a .4 shot, back in the day, and then the rule on the .3 tip in, because you're right, it's supposed to just be a tip in. But if you could take a midpoint between those two things, it would be that Courtney Lee shot.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's no way he got it off in .3. I mean, it's .4, .5. I mean, and we're ignoring the fact that, Ben McLemore bricked 2 free throws and it would have been a tie, or it could have even been just a Kings victory, or we're omitting the fact that Jason Thompson and Rudy Gay got tangled up on Marc Gasol and got picked and gave Courtney Lee a wide open shot. But at the same time, it's unfortunate that this happened to Sacramento because they have played really well. They didn't deserve to lose that game, especially in that fashion. And if there is a way to look at that game and overturn a win, I don't know that I've seen that, where the NBA actually overturns a win. I mean, maybe they send an apology, but is it possible that they could overturn a win?
I don't know. Did you guys ever get an apology for Game 6?
Oh, no, just from Tim Donaghy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's worth a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they I mean, what's the chance of that? Like less than 1%? But I don't know. Those things are always good to rile up the fans because, show them you care. And I don't know.
Hey, this is NBA 3.0.
Maybe they've got. Obviously, what I was wondering about this is at what point does physics become involved? Because, if you're going to time things and say, okay, well, if the clock would have started here, you got to almost track the trajectory of the ball. And I know that it's probably overwhelming evidence that shot shouldn't have counted. But, I mean, it kind of goes back to the replay rule. That one shot showed that little gap of space. And there's your, legal America, the doubt factor that makes it impossible for them to overturn. And that's probably what the NBA will hang their hat on.
I don't know. You can whip out an iPhone and put it in slow-mo and see how long it took. I mean, I think that there's going to be a way for them to look at this and come up with a definitive answer of what exactly happened. I mean, it's rough, but this is kind of what you have to, we've got to kind of walk people through this, right? There's so many elements to it, and I like everything that happened up until the point that Marc Gasol set a second pick. He set an initial pick on Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay shook it, and Jason Thompson slid up. He went to set a second pick, and Rudy Gay was like, "Oh wait, the ball hasn't been thrown in yet," and that's when it really happened.
Well, and that actually started to jump on your toes there.
Oh.
The fury on Twitter has really, for the first time in I think all year, been directed at Mike Malone. I don't buy that stuff. It's kind of on its face, it doesn't make sense because I think Mike Malone's been a key to the success of the Kings, a key to the growth of DeMarcus Cousins. Can't say enough about that guy from just having to deal with a really bad situation and look at them now. But he's gotten a lot of criticism, and I think he even said after the game, I've got to do better. But that play was just really bad. You have to tell your players, in my opinion, you have to run a zone there. I don't know if you agree or not,
I don't
but
know. I certainly don't think that Rudy Gay should get picked off. He should know that the screen is coming. I mean, that's basic, right? It's just basic, and it's basic for Jason Thompson to switch. I mean, the dude's 6'11", and Courtney Lee shot the ball from his waist. That ball should have been 10 rows deep, and it was just slow reaction. It was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. I mean, you're just
there's only so many angles you can score it at, though. I mean, there's one play I've always wanted to see work, and I've never seen it done, is if you have .3 and you got no chance of getting close to the rim, maybe you're taking it out from your own basket or like, a really awkward spot on the sides, is try to volleyball the thing in. Like you're digging a volleyball. I think
just set it or knuckles. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I could see that. Just knuckle it in from, I'm with you. I'm with you.
But
I buy that.
You got to defend the hoop, and there's really no other. No, I mean, you could. I'm actually glad they didn't put Hollis underneath the hoop, or Hollins, pardon me, because that was a foul waiting to happen, especially with those refs. But yeah, all you have to do is make sure you don't get backpicked there. So I don't know, and that's something from a coaching perspective. I know the players don't get it all the time. And there's some players that get it more than others. But as a coach, you have a checklist of things that you go through on every timeout. And one of those things is, what do I tell these guys right before we go back out to the court? And, what is it going to be that they cannot forget to do? And you tell them, and you tell them twice, and you tell them 3 times, and your assistants tell them again. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen tonight because both of them got picked.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen maybe something a little bit different. Maybe not Jason Thompson right there. Maybe Reggie Evans. I don't know. I think it's a really difficult thing. All right, you know what? Let's switch gears. We can't beat this dead horse anymore, I don't think, Mr. Bruski. And we still have a few minutes here. The one thing, we're going to talk about a couple of things, our typical NBA, around the NBA stuff. We're going to talk about a fantasy pick or two. But there was a story that came out today that I'm not sure if you had a chance to read. But the Chris Ballard piece with Ryan Anderson on SI.com was so incredibly tremendous, talking about love and loss and the horrible tragedy of Gia Alamond killing herself, and Ryan Anderson having to find her, and sort of the recovery. Ryan Anderson is a Sacramento native. He is a kid that, won a state championship on the floor at Arco Arena when it was Arco Arena. He is a local kid made good and got realistically put into his own personal, hell, really. And I don't know, did you have a chance to read the Ballard story?
Yeah, not only did I get to read it, I really think this piece of work, in the world of sports, to get the convergence of that level of writing and that subject matter. I mean, I didn't full on cry, but I had dust in the room, and the tears were welling up because you could just feel it. And knowing that he's from Sacramento, kind of knowing the connection that people in this area have with their family and their loved ones, and it's a very together place. You just kind of almost felt like you were in the room there with him, with Monty Williams, with it's just that story had kind of like gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. And I kept thinking to myself, if I know Sacramento like I think I do, when he comes into town, he's going to get the biggest, warmest ovation. And I hope for his sake and everybody else's sake that it doesn't make him feel worse, because he's kind of going through that. I just want to get through the day, and that's it's just a really, really, really traumatic experience. But got a lot of respect for Monty Williams after that. Really interesting tidbits about just Ryan Anderson's upbringing, some of the anxiety issues he dealt with growing up, and just the vulnerability that I think he showed, then getting injured, and then he's come back and he's just played so well. And to tie it all in to basketball, he would be such a good fit for the Kings. I mean, look at
He
Memphis.
should have been the good fit for the Kings.
I know.
You know the story, right? He came here. He
Yeah.
came here and the Maloofs wouldn't open the purse strings, and instead they gave Jason Thompson a contract, and that was really the decision. It was Jason Thompson at $5 to $6 million a year versus Ryan Anderson at $8 million a year, and that's what he was going to make regardless of where he went. But he came here. He gave them the opportunity to sign him, and he would have been the absolute perfect fit next to DeMarcus Cousins. And I think a lot of people see that now. I mean, they're like, man, if you only had a three-point specialist next to DeMarcus. We're seeing how it works with the Pelicans, and it's just magical. I mean, it's just killing it.
And the rim protection thing's not that big of a deal because look at Memphis. They don't have any rim protection at all.
No.
And they're one of the better defenses in the league. So I think you get a rim protector that has a little bit of offensive upside a la Serge Ibaka, or you get a guy that's completely on the other end of the spectrum that knows how to take charges and can rebound a little bit and hit that three, and that's Ryan Anderson. So I don't know, when do they come into town?
They come into town on Tuesday.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Oh
no,
my-
they're here on Tuesday. Yeah.
Wow.
We've got
Okay.
San Antonio on Saturday. We've got the Pelicans on Tuesday and the Bulls on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe my days are off. I mean, they all run together at this point.
I think I'm gonna have to come down to the arena for that. That's might have to pull little strings, get off of Tuesday night game duty at NBC Sports.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, let's move past again, I'll just say this. If you're in a situation and if you are feeling down in the dumps and depression is something that you live with, please reach out for help. I think what the Ryan Anderson story, more than anything else, the lesson that you learn from the Ryan Anderson story, people do die all the time, but a suicide leaves behind people with so many questions and so much hurt and so many what ifs that you're ruining people that realistically that you love. And so if you do have issues with depression, suicide, you really need to think about the other side of the coin and not what you're doing for yourself, but what you're doing to the people that you're leaving behind. And with that, I would like to move on to another subject, if that's okay, Mr. Aaron Bruski.
Yeah, let's cheer it up.
Yeah, let's cheer it up. All right, so let's get back to a little bit of NBA talk. We've got a few more minutes left. The Sacramento Kings do have a very, very tough schedule, and probably three of the most diverse teams that you're going to run into over the next three games. We got San Antonio, which is literally, it's just a clockwork. It's the internals of a clock just moving seamlessly together. You have the Pelicans, who are just a lot of talent thrown into a bag, shook up and thrown out. It's almost like playing Yahtzee. It's you playing dice at a bar. That's what you got there.
I like them a lot this year.
Yeah.
They're really fitting. And Tyreek Evans is hitting 50% of his threes. Not to interrupt.
No, yeah, I know he's hitting 50% of his threes, and when I heard that, I was like, did he shoot two? And one went in and one didn't. And then I look and he's actually hitting them, and good for him. Calipari really did a number on him in college at Memphis. Really took away his confidence in his jump shot and made him just like a bull in a china shop. Like that was his job, and it's good to see him recover. But Aaron, what do you make of this three grouping of teams? Because you go from literally like the most well orchestrated offense that we've seen for years to like frenetic, crazy, athletic, just pieces that haven't melded yet, to the greatest defensive team in the league in the Chicago Bulls in the span of 3 games.
It's going to be tough. And this is why I think these losses were so crushing for the Kings, is that they need to now get their heads straight The San Antonio game is always interesting because you never know when Pop's going to rest his guys. And Sacramento's always been a prime place for him to do that.
Yes.
And so let's just assume they've got a full squad. Kawhi Leonard is just amazing. And he has the ability to not shut Rudy Gay down, but a 5 for 18 night would not surprise me one bit. So that's kind of the name of the game there. They don't have anybody to cover DeMarcus Cousins. I don't think Tim Duncan could cover DeMarcus Cousins. I think he can get DeMarcus Cousins in foul trouble. So that's an interesting dynamic there. I think San Antonio is a winnable game because their eye is not on right now. I don't think they'll come in like some of these teams have come in where they're just completely taking the first quarter off or taking the entire game off. But then you get New Orleans, and you get Tyreek Evans coming home. You get Anthony Davis, who has no ceiling whatsoever. He's doing things we have not seen in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So when you think of that guy and you put LeBron and KD up at number 1 and number 2, don't act like that guy's not in that tier, because he is in that tier right now. People just don't know what to do with it. It's kind of like Cousins. He's so good, people want to make him knock on the door a year or two, but Cousins is right up there with those guys, at least in terms of the MVP discussions. But Davis is in there in terms of like, this guy does everything, and then some. He does it at a high level. So
he reminds me of a young Kevin Garnett.
Oh, and with a lot of skill, because he grew up as a guard. Drew Holiday's having a great season. Him and Collison, they match up exactly the same, pretty much. Eric Gordon's a real weak spot for that squad, so if Ben McLemore could get off, that would probably be the spot to do it. That's a tough game. And then the Bulls, yeah, you're going to have trouble there any way you slice it, because interior-wise, Taj Gibson is perhaps the best matchup for Rudy Gay out there. And then Pau Gasol along with Joakim Noah. Wow, that's going to be some fireworks with Joakim Noah and DeMarcus Cousins on the same court.
Yeah, it's always a lively one too. The Bulls.
Didn't he do the F you, you're cool last time he was here on his way out in the ejection?
Joakim?
Joakim, yeah.
That's right, he did. He got tossed quick. That was a wild one too. And Dunleavy, Dunleavy and DeMarcus Cousins hate each other. And for good reason. I mean, like I watched, when I used to have my perfect seats courtside, before they wiped those out and put in like high-rise apartments for the ownership group. There was some nastiness, and there was a fast break where somebody went to throw in a little, like a runner on a fast break, and Cousins was just kind of standing under the rim in case it came out. And Dunleavy came in and sideswiped him and almost took out his knee, and that almost got really ugly, really, really ugly quick.
That's a TNT game too. So the one thing though about Cousins, and the technical he got tonight was total BS.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's
and the refs have been like sensitive for the last week. I don't know what's going on there, but that showed the maturation of DeMarcus Cousins more than anything, because he gets a horrible technical foul, a horrible foul call, I think. I can't remember what it was, but I can remember thinking that was pretty ticky-tack. And you saw Ty Corbin just give the motion to calm down. DeMarcus, you could see the gears turning in his head, and he was still upset, but he didn't freak out. And in that TNT game with Joakim Noah and all the lights, that might be his first big test. When the pressure's on, and if you're losing at home in a high-stakes game, maybe you're carrying a 5-game losing streak into it. Can he hold his cool when Joakim Noah just comes out of nowhere and slams him?
That would be 6. That would be 6 game.
Yeah.
I see, and that's the danger of the schedule. I think that's what everyone looked at this schedule and was like, man, you have a brutal road trip, and you come back from that brutal road trip and just get hit with like high-end NBA talent again and again and again.
Doesn't get easier from there.
No. All right, Aaron, we are running out of time, so I want you to give me something fantasy-wise. Something. We've got Kyle O'Quinn. I don't even remember who you gave me last week. It was a 76ers shooting guard.
Oh, who did I give you last? Probably Hollis Thompson. I'm trying to give you
No.
guys that you won't. Who was it?
I don't know. You gave me
I don't-
somebody. A 3-point, a defendant and 3 guy.
A 3. Oh, KJ McDaniels.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah. He's a fun one. You got to hang on to him. O'Quinn. They don't report injuries in Orlando, and he's probably got a broken ankle. Nobody knows it.
That's illegal now. They have to report injuries, which is nice.
It's just weird. They just know they give you the bare minimum in Orlando for whatever reason. I think I'm gonna give you. I like these under the radar targets because you can get pickups that you know that are never available or everybody's gotten to them already. Zach LaVine in Minnesota. This is a kid that played 4 minutes or 13 minutes, one or the other, prior to starting and getting a 30-minute workload for the last 2 games. He can't shoot a lick right now, but his athleticism is off the charts, and he's getting a lot of rebounds, a lot of assists. If he can put it together and just be serviceable and then throw in a couple steals and blocks, he's going to be a guy that can actually make a difference for your fantasy team for up to 7 weeks while Ricky Rubio's out.
Zach LaVine has unlimited leaping ability. I literally think he could jump over a building.
I think so too.
Watching him in summer league was like, oh my gosh, look at this. But at the same time, he also really reminded me of Tyler Honeycutt, and that didn't work out so well. So Zach LaVine, okay, I can buy that. He's a decently high draft pick, a guy with major upside on a team with a bunch of guys with major upside. So Zach LaVine. All right, well, Aaron, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Cowbell Kingdom podcast. Do you have anything else for me?
No, just a tip of the cap to you, sir.
Excellent. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by our good friends at Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeca.com for coupons and locations today. We will be back next week. We'll have another guest, and we'll have plenty of basketball to talk about again. So for Aaron Bruski, I am James Ham. Thank you for listening to the podcast.